Welcome back to Broadway Drumming 101. On behalf of the team, thanks for listening and for being part of this community. Broadway Drumming 101 was created to pull back the curtain on what it's really like to make a living in the pit. Whether you're a student, a working musician, or just someone who loves theater, this is where real experience meets real inspiration. If you haven't been to signaturebrandworks.com, now's the time. We've got all new Broadway Drumming 101 gear, shirts, hoodies, mugs, backpacks, sweatpants, mouse pads, and more, made for musicians who take pride in what happens behind the curtain. You can also grab the Broadway Sub Playbook, a must-read ebook that lays out everything you need to know to step into someone else's chair with confidence. It's the roadmap many wish they had when they first started subbing. And coming this December, Broadway Bound and Beyond, a musician's guide to building a theater career. It's not just another book. It's packed with real stories, lessons, and strategies from years in the trenches. The kind of advice that helps you turn your talent into a career. Pre-order your copy now at BroadwayBoundBook.com. Subscribe at BroadwayDrumming101.com and stay connected to the community that's shaping the next generation of Broadway musicians.
Welcome to Broadway Drumming 101. My guest today is Tom Jorgensen. How are you?
Never better, man. How about you?
I'm good. I caught you in between acts. Oh, not between acts. Between shows. You're on.
Yeah, we got 15-minute time crunch. We just got our 5-minute call. You gotta go.
So where you from?
Short ever. Well, I started when I was 3, and I did this, and I went to school, and
thank you.
And goodbye. Show's
that'd
over.
Be funny, man.
Yeah.
So in between shows, and the tour is Beetlejuice.
That's
All
right.
All right. Which show I've never seen, which I wish I had seen it. There was interruption, came back, and I was working at the time too, but I hear it's a really good show.
Of course, I'm biased. You're asking somebody who works on the show. I say this all the time, even though I do work on the show, I did see it before I got the job. It was on my list of shows to see, and I was absolutely blown away by it. It was actually... I had watched Shannon Ford because Josh Samuels was a good buddy of mine. And he said, hey, you should just hit up Shannon to watch the book. And he was already stacked with subs. So I was just going into face to name and just check out his show. And it was the week before COVID shut everything down. So crazy timing. So that was, 2020. I saw the show, or at least saw his book before I had even seen the show. So I didn't know what was happening on stage. And then post-pandemic, when they went to the Marquee, I went to go see the show, and it was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was just a spectacle. The sound design was insane. It reminded me of all the things that made me fall in love with what musical theater drumming was about and how it pertained to the show and mixed and matched and how it helped tell the story on stage. And I was just like, yo, this is really something going on. So it's an absolute privilege to play the show 8 times a week.
Speaking of playing the show, what do you think is the toughest part of that book, musically or technically?
Physically. Technically, physically is probably the most difficult part of this book in particular. I just happen to be sitting in front of it. It's a massive rig. And when I saw Shannon play, my playing style is never really loud. I've never categorized myself as a loud drummer. My philosophy has always been sound driven. So it's all about finding the sound as a kind of a separation from volume, because volume and sound are 2 very different things. And so that's always been my philosophy. And Shannon played really loud and massively. Shannon Ford, who originated the drum book. So I watched him after I got the job, and he is over the shoulder, and he's like getting this massive sound, but like hitting for an arena tour, for goodness sakes. And that's his background anyway. So he's taking a lot of that in, and I'm going, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I don't have that over the shoulder kind of thing. I was asking him about a lot. Before this tour, I was primarily, I'd say 98% a traditional grip player. Because jazz is my background, and even in other shows, like I'd find a way to play traditional. It's just not that I'm advocating for a technique or the other. It's just what I grew up doing and what I spent a lot of time practicing, and that's just what I ended up practicing, and that was my upbringing. So just getting around, like, how am I going to do this? And how am I going to do that with, I had to really get my match grip chops together and back, because I'm not totally foreign. I played match grip in high school, some in college, but I hadn't in a while. So there were just some things about this book that was just physically impossible to do traditional grip. So I had to make sure that, you know what, look, if I'm getting the sound that I'm used to from my left hand, you got to figure out how to just shed the technique, get a certain degree of comfortable to where I'm able to maximize the sound that I want, and figure out choreography of how to switch back and forth. Just getting whatever makes you a winner at the end of the day. So nobody out in the house cares if I'm playing traditional or match. So it's whatever is going to get the job done in the most effective and most storytelling way that's not going to get in the way of everything. Part of me was, I had to let go of the little preciousness of being, I'm the traditional grip guy. That doesn't matter anymore. It's whatever's going to get the job done. So I had to figure out a lot of different angles. You'll see like my toms are angled still. I don't know if you could tell, but like my snare drum is angled. A lot of my cymbals are angled in a way that can acquiesce both match grip and traditional, so that I'm not totally out of position for my body. I'm very particular about how I set up my kit. So it keeps me upright. I'm not slouching. And if I am slouching, it's an immediate after the show going, oh, something's wrong. I hurt this, or I've got knots in my back, or something or other. I've set this up in a way that the show will immediately tell me if I'm not doing something right with my body. So now, just to keep the longevity of that 8 times a week is probably the most challenging part of this book for sure.
Did you start out playing traditional grip, and why traditional as opposed to matched?
I started out playing match, but it was a quick switch to traditional because one of my first ever huge influences was Buddy Rich. I'm not alone in that. It's not unlike most other drummers. Buddy Rich and Dave Weckl were two of the guys that I had early VHSs given to me when I was like really getting serious. And I had every Buddy Rich record and album that I was just like Ugu Gaga over. And just seeing the dexterity of that, I was just like, nope, monkey see, monkey do, got to do that. And it was just really cool. And it was just something that felt very comfortable. And then all throughout like middle school and high school, I was playing in the jazz ensembles. And so it was just, I found certain ways that I was able to just speak a little bit better playing traditional grip. And I'd switch back and forth, but traditional, I just felt at home. And so that's just what I opted to shed and practice. But again, it's whatever makes you a winner. So that's just what I was drawn to.
Speaking of winners, really heavy hitting traditional grip player is Stuart Copeland. I don't know if you ever was influenced by his style, and did you like, okay, I can hit hard too.
Yeah, Stuart Copeland was one for sure. Todd Sucherman from Styx is another one that actively switches back. And I've, even in recent years, especially for this gig, I borrowed a lot of some of the ways that he's set up. I still keep to stuff that works for me in my body, but a lot of like certain philosophies that he uses in order to switch back and forth without putting his body through strains. But he was one. Steve Jordan is another that was like a just top 3, top 5 at least. I'd never rank stuff, but just in one of those of influential bits is like he would just, but everything was so great, and it's just his sound that he would get. I was, this can be done. It's not impossible. And then he would switch back just whatever fit the song or whatever fit. Sometimes there's a sound that you get from match grip. There's a sound you get from traditional grip. So that immediately just got me like, okay, now the sound is malleable. I don't have to be precious about one thing or another. It's whatever's going to get the sound is going to get the sound. And that's what I'm after at the end of the day.
When I was looking up some information about you, I found out that you played with a group that I thought was very interesting. A friend of mine actually auditioned for them, but didn't get one of the gigs. But it's Postmodern Jukebox, and you playing all traditional grip with them, because tell people about that particular group and that gig and how you got involved with them.
Sure. Yeah. I ended up touring with them for on and off about 5 years, 4.5, 5 years. It actually started, I got involved with them because I had worked on cruise ships. It's such a roundabout way of how I got involved with them. I had worked on cruise ships right out of college. And because I worked on ships for on and off about 1.5 years, almost 2 years, I had gotten really comfortable with the music supervisor of Holland America, was the cruise line that I worked with. He's still a very dear friend of mine to this day, that he oversaw all of the musicians being placed on certain ships and putting people together for certain bands and all that. So while I was doing ships, he very quickly saw that I had a capability of being a music director, and he just liked how I played and how I got along with people. And he asked me to be a music director, and he just kept me in the scope of having me for certain coveted cruise itineraries, jobs, and players that were serious about being there. And so I was done with ships for a couple of years after I'd done them, and I was trying to be back in New York, really do the thing and work. And he called me while I was doing a regional theater gig in Vermont somewhere. And he said, "Hey, we're trying this new concept out for Holland America. It's this band, Postmodern Jukebox, and Holland is interested in trying to meld something together with them. Would you be interested in coming on and doing a trial run? It's the last 4 weeks of our Alaska run. It'd be a perfect time to test this concept out with clientele." And I almost turned it down because ship life, and I learned so many absolutely amazing lessons from doing ships, and I will never knock that gig. Some people do, and I don't go that route because it's a gig is a gig, and you either learn from something or you don't. But ships had an expiration date for me, and I didn't feel that was my place to be. I'd been a little bit familiar with the band, and it was honestly, when I did some more digging about them, it was all the stuff that it was like in my wheelhouse. My background was jazz, but it's a fusion between jazz and the pop world, but they're taking all the popular songs of today and then retroizing them and Motown and swing and jazz sorts of styles. And I'm like, that's really hip. I don't want to be on ships, but this is really cool. And if it's only a month, sure, let's do it. And I did. The people involved with putting that concept together were a lot of the creatives. Scott Bradley, who created it, came on to oversee it. One of the music supervisor directors that had been involved with PMJ for a while was music directing that whole thing. Holland America got a few of the musicians together, and then Postmodern Jukebox got a few of their singers together to try this out. So over the month, we just really gelled as a band, and we just had a blast figuring out this concept. And at the end of it, they liked our playing so much, they said, "We're going to add you to the roster, our touring roster." And since then, tours have come up and been offered, and I've been all over the world with them. I did several United States, North America tours, been overseas to Europe a couple times with them. I did an Australia, New Zealand tour with them, and just very fortunate. And it was a great time. So it was ultimately how I ended up spending time with them. And it was a blast. It was a real blast.
So before you did that, you said you did cruise ships, but before cruise ships, you went to college. Did you go to college to study music?
I did, yeah. I went to the New School for Jazz and Contemporary Music because jazz was the thing I wanted to do. And if I could do a couple other things, that'd be cool too. I didn't want to just solely stay in one thing, but as jazz players, they improvise and they pivot, and it's all about staying malleable. But jazz was the avenue. But then after studying jazz very seriously in college, and of course it's in New York, which is exactly where I wanted to be, it became really clear that there's more to music. And then it just kind of led to ships, where I just really cutting teeth on stuff that I wanted to cut my teeth on. And yeah, I went to school for jazz. That was ultimately what I wanted.
Did you turn into a jazz snob at the New School?
Yes and no. You could say anything you want about music institutions, and all of them are true. But the thing that I found really enlightening about the New School in particular was it really allowed its students to experiment. It was the small school. I'm not familiar with the class sizes or school size as well. But when I went, I think there was just a little less than 300 students in the jazz school. And I could be a little bit off here and there, but it was relatively small. It took up 2 floors in one of the buildings on 13th Street. And so we all knew each other really well. We were all very tight knit, and we were always walking by practice rooms, hearing somebody shed something. And it was just a constant, very friendly, competitive sort of vibe. But in order to be in with the young cats doing some hip stuff, you had to subscribe to some sort of, I don't know if snobbery is the right word, but what I loved about it was that it forced you to not sleep on some heavy stuff that other people were checking out. So it just took you along for a ride. So-and-so is checking out this new Joshua Redman record that just came out, or this Ambrose Akinmusire album that just came out. And I would never have checked that out had you not said that. And so then you check it out, and then we go see the shows because it was in New York. And that was ultimately what I moved to New York for. Is that came out, go see them. And wow, you could see Brian Blade at the Vanguard and the Fellowship. So there was a little bit of that, but then also there were other things at the New School. New School had an R&B ensemble. New School had that before my time, Bernard Purdy taught, and then he left, I think, the semester before I joined. So I wasn't angry about that at all. Sarcasm, but I would have loved to study with him. They had all sorts of different kinds of, like, John Coltrane ensemble. They had a fusion ensemble, jazz messengers ensemble. They had different ensembles that you could take as an elective. So it really helped you expand your musical horizon.
Yeah, I was wondering if people there would frown upon a group like Snarky Puppy. And it's jazz, but it's kind of the fusion vein, and it's modern, and it's younger people doing a modern thing, modern take on jazz.
Yeah, I would certainly say that people had opinions. I personally didn't feel any discouragement towards one thing or another. So that was very nice, and that I appreciated.
So going to a cruise ship, first and only time I've ever been on a cruise ship was the Broadway cruise last year, playing a bunch of different artists and playing a bunch of different songs. But the whole idea of being on a ship, just looking out and just seeing nothing but water. Jeez.
Yeah.
And then, of course, if you have a show, what's it in the hull, in the front of the ship? What's it called?
Yeah, the bow. The bow is
Yes.
the theaters are normally in the bow of the ship.
And you're
Ships,
sitting there getting ready and you feel it. Yes.
Yep.
I guess you got used to it. Did you ever get sick?
Yeah,
at
you'd
all?
get like this and that, and the hi-hat's going over and this, and yeah.
How long did it take for you to get acclimated to that kind of climate?
The movement took a second because you're walking down, once you set sail, you're walking down the hallway going to get dinner or something, and you're having to readjust while you're walking. Thankfully, the technology has stabilizers and stuff, so it's not usually that bad, but you do feel it. And what I really took from that in particular was body posture sitting behind a kit. I learned a ton about how to sit behind a kit. At the new school, I took lessons with Michael Carvin, who's still one of my mentors, and I call him every time I'm like going nuts and all that, and getting a good perspective back. But he taught me a lot of sitting behind a drum kit is a lot like sitting behind a dinner table. You don't eat food like this because then you're not digesting your food. And a fighter doesn't fight like this. They fight upright because oxygen can get to your brain and you can stay clear. And so being on a ship, it forced my abs and forced my core to sit on a kit to where I'm mostly heels up, heels down if I'm changing technique or so. In order to be heels up, your core has to stay strong. Otherwise, you're like this behind the kit and you can't center yourself because then otherwise your ride cymbal is going to get louder for a second. Back off. So that taught me a lot about sitting behind a kit and being efficient with stabilizing my core. And then as soon as I got off the ship and played a land gig, I was like, whoa, it really was immediate. And I felt it very obviously of just staying upright and it helped the touch around the kit. So it took a minute to acclimate, but we were dealing with lots of different variant styles of music. It kept our minds off of the movement and onto the job at hand.
High school, college, jazz, cruise ships, postmodern jukebox. When did musical theater first land on your radar, and what pulled you into that world as a drummer?
Yeah, I also, not unlike other drummers, and you've interviewed certainly a lot of my friends that have all said the same thing, is I was really inspired by Wicked because we took my high school took a class trip or a band trip to Chicago one year where we saw a Broadway show and we did a jazz clinic at, I think it was DePaul, and just had a trip. It was one of the school trips, and we saw Wicked, the touring production that was in Chicago. I was a part of musical theater in my high school, playing for some of the school plays and musicals every spring. And it wasn't really, I didn't think it was a very serious thing. It was just something fun to do, and it got me reading music and adapting to different kinds of ensembles and playing styles. But then hearing the Wicked drum book in a house, and when I tell you it was mixed to perfection, I'll never forget that experience of hearing how drums, everybody knows that drum book is an absolute masterclass in killer, just orchestrationally, it's serving such a meticulous purpose, and it's epic, it's huge, and it was mixed so well. I just was like, oh, this is something serious. I could do this as a career. So radar. It's on my radar now. And so even in college, when I moved to New York, I took an interest. Rolando Morales Matos, if you're familiar, is one of the hand percussionists at The Lion King. At the new school, he taught a hand percussion class. So a lot of congas, a lot of timbale work, djembe work. He taught a hand percussion specific elective class at the new school. And at the end of each semester, he takes a handful of his students backstage to the show to watch him play the show. A great, great opportunity. So from that, I knew, okay, that was my first ever pit that I went to watch. And I said, I'm really serious into checking this out. And so he gave me the number for a couple other people. And the next number he gave me was Matt Vanderen's number over at Wicked. And of course, I was giddy as all heck because I could go see him. And I hit him up, and I was young at the time. Dear Mr. Vanderen, it would be an absolute pleasure. We've all written those emails. And he very graciously invited me in, and I had the time of my life. And that's when it just, oh, I'm interested in this, very interested. So that took off. He gave me some more numbers to reach out to other guys, and I started sitting in more pits and just learning from them, piecing together what this world really is like. So Wicked ultimately set that into motion. It's why, man, that show, even to this day, is that I would love to play that show. That would be so fun because it's got so many elements of it. And it reminds me a lot of this book too, or this book reminds me a lot of that and vice versa, because it's just stylistically, you have to wear different hats, a lot of different hats in both of these shows. So that's a pull for sure. He's a force, I'll tell you. He's amazing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And he couldn't have been more kind. He's the nicest guy to a young kid who didn't know what the world was like. And it just so gracious. My first visit with him, I didn't even know to wear pit blacks. And so he was just like, oh, okay, we'll just have, if somebody has a spare shirt, and give me a spare shirt to wear in the pit. Because the drums at the time were in the pit. Now I understand they're in another room.
You wore some like neon yellow.
I just wore something. I don't know what I wore. I didn't know.
Yeah. Interesting. So you were in New York, you graduated, and what was your first show that you actually got a chance to be a part of, either having your own chair off Broadway or subbing somewhere?
I would say my first large scale, what ended up getting me into doing this very seriously professionally. I'd done some regional theater. I did the Music Man in Vermont. I did a couple other shorter run regional stuff here and there, but I had gotten a call out of the blue from a very dear friend of mine, Elena Bonomo, who was at the time on the Waitress First National Tour. She and I, prior to her even getting that tour, were very dear friends, and we were giving each other gigs all the time that we couldn't do. Anytime I had recommended her for it, it would always come back to me saying, Elena did a killer job. Thank you for recommending her. And I would very much like to say she felt the same thing that when she recommended me. For years, we'd constantly give each other gigs here and there. She was encountering a problem where she was on the Waitress tour, and she couldn't get an approved sub to come cover for her when she needed a week off for, I think she had a family engagement that she really couldn't miss. And so she couldn't get one of the subs that was subbing in the New York show to come out. And so she said, let me just pitch Tom's name. And so would you be available, and would you want to learn the book just to come out and cover for the week? And I was very humbled that she would ask me for that. And I cleared my whole schedule. And I think once she got the approval to have me onboarded, she got me in touch with Rich Mercurio, who was the drummer there, and Nadia DiGiallonardo, the music director and supervisor. And they approved it. They say, send us a couple videos of you playing certain numbers from the show. And I went straight into, I didn't even have a practice room at that time. So I was just like, okay, I'm searching for any place that had space available for rent, and packing a drum kit in a tight room with a little itty bitty crappy GoPro up over top. And I just put something together and shed it. And so finally they liked how I played it. But even before going out to sub on the tour, they said, why don't you come in and sub the show in New York before you go out? And I'd never heard of that happening before. And I was like, okay, when's good? And they're like, whenever you're ready. And they were so gracious and kind. And they said, come watch the book. And whenever you feel ready, just come in and play the show with us and just get your feet wet a little bit. On Broadway. It was my first show ever. It was Broadway debut. And they couldn't have been kinder. I got things together. I probably went to watch Rich 3 times. He said, watch as many times as you want, do whatever. And I went and subbed the show. They liked how I did it. And they said, yeah, go on out and sub the tour. So I went and subbed the tour. And from there, they kept me in mind. So I was subbing for Rich quite often whenever I wasn't on the road with PMJ, because I was in and out of doing those tours. Whenever I was back in town, I'd say, hey, Rich, I'm back. And they would have me in. So I would sub that. And then at some point, Elena was leaving the show, leaving the first national tour. And then I went to Jeff Roberts for a period of time. And then he had to leave to do another show, I believe. And then it fell to me. They said, you don't want to take over. So I took over the last 6 or so months of the Waitress first national tour before it closed.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So it's the sorts of things of just being ready for when the door opens. And that door just opened and I did everything I could to be ready. They couldn't have been kinder about the whole thing. Very fortunate that turned out the way it did.
So we being on the road and playing the same thing the same way, 8 shows a week, did you ever think about possible injuries and how did you go about avoiding them since you were out of your normal routine being at home? What were your approaches to that specific thing?
Yeah, I'm even 830 something shows. We're right around 830, 40 or so. I've lost, I can't remember exactly, but we're in the 800s. Even still to this day, I'm incredibly mindful of injury prevention or doing what I can. And at the moment, even at intermission, had to go see PT because I just had a knot in my back that was influencing a little bit of stuff. And so it was another wake up call of, examine your posture and check some stuff out. And so I redefined my warm-up technique. I redefined what I do off stage or out of the pit. I'll do extra stretching. I do a weekly stretching program. So 20 minutes before bed, I do some fairly intense long hold stretches from shoulders to hamstrings to hip opening exercises and back and wrist twists and ankles and all that. So I'll stretch before I go to bed each night. I'm just very adamant about making sure I warm up properly, because if I don't warm up before the show, it's pretty immediate of you just can't do that. It's longevity. You can't sustain that. So it was very early on that I even got some advice from Shannon Ford, who has experience touring. And, I said, if you want to keep up doing the show 8 times a week, what do I need to do? And one of the things he said was just get plenty of rest, treat your body well, get good food. Junk food is a really easy thing to find on the road. And so just finding options to make sure you're keeping your body clean, and hydration on the road is an absolute must. Water is your best friend. It cures pretty much every ailment that you might have. If you got a headache, you're probably dehydrated. If you've got knots in your back, or if you're feeling tension in your body, you're probably dehydrated. Set an intentional mindset into place. So that's what helped me really lock into gear for being on tour and doing this 8 times a week. We don't have the luxury of subbing out a show every once in a while, like once every week. If we get tired or if we get sick or whatever, God forbid.
Speaking of that, how do you keep things fresh and locked in after being on the road and playing the same thing for so long? How do you maintain your sanity and how do you approach the show to keep it at a high level?
Yeah, I have a few methods around this. And one of them was one of the biggest lessons I've ever learned from Michael Carvin, among a million other things. We can have a whole episode about just what I've learned from Michael Carvin, because he's been such a profound influence on me and my sending off into my career and my upbringing. One of the things he would always say is, it's not about what you're playing, it's about what you're doing. Ultimately, what that means is it's not about necessarily, I'll phrase it this way. We might get really focused on this lick or that rudiment or that particular thing, but it's not what the focus in this estimation should be. What are you doing with how you're playing this instrument? What are you doing with the overall picture? How am I getting to this? How am I getting to that? It was then reinforced by being on cruise ships, where some couple on one of the cruises might request Margaritaville for the 50th time that night. Sweet Caroline is still a song I have trouble with listening. My bandmates know this, very much about myself. Is Sweet Caroline comes on the radio, I'm just like, I'm traumatized. I can't listen to it no more. But this lesson was reinforced by, we would have to play Margaritaville or 2 Pina Coladas on the pool set for the 50th time or something. And each time you could make a choice in that moment. I could be bitter and just, okay, whatever, and phone it in. And that's never been a part of my upbringing at all, phoning it in or just going on autopilot and just checking the watch, being on the phone. I do everything I can. That's just not in my DNA to do that. So what that then turned into is if I'm playing Margarita, okay, let me do something with this. What am I doing with this song? Let me preoccupy what my intentions are. I could listen to the bass player and figure out what if I sit back in the verses and then drive the groove in the chorus. What happens? What happens with the groove there? Or what happens if I listen to the keyboard player? Or if the vocalist is changing their phrasing on a certain thing, can I catch something? No matter the song I was playing, I always had something to do, or at least figure out what it was that I was doing for the music. So then at no point it became about the song I was playing or the groove I was playing. It was like, what was I doing with it? And so then now it pertains to shows. Again, that lesson was then reinforced by Rich Mercurio, whom he so very kindly, he and Nadia pulled me aside after my Broadway debut of playing the show. And I'll never forget this. They took me aside after the show. The show's done. Everybody leaves and goes home almost immediately after the show. They've got things to do. It's usually late, but they spent their time 45 minutes to an hour post show sitting me down talking about not just the Waitress grooves and I played this lick here and that lick there, but they went into depth of what we're extracting from these songs and what is the story behind the lyrics and behind the groove that we chose to orchestrate with this. And they went into detail of whoever is on for Jenna, the lead role, or whoever was being featured in the song. Expand your listening, open up to not just burying yourself in the page or listening to burying the click or trying to think you're doing something to get the job done. It's like there's a lot of things to pay attention to. So if you're not hip to that, if you're not focusing on doing something as opposed to playing something, you're going to miss out on a whole lot of things. And ultimately, that's what telling a story, that's what our job is, to help tell the story on stage. And so now I'm never thinking about staying right on top of with a click or playing this song again and doing the same show again. I'm always having something very different to do. And then if I find that it is getting, because inevitably it will get monotonous, the week lasts 5 seconds when you're on a tour this long. This is our year 3 of this tour. And this is the longest job that I've ever had in my entire career. Inevitably, there are times where I don't even know what town I'm in. It's just, okay, we're coming in and have my shoes on, we keep playing it again. But whenever I get into that mindset, I walk around to the front of the theater and see all the people entering into the show. It's with our show in particular, Beetlejuice is such a cult classic, and from the movie and the show, it's just really grabbed a huge following. And so without fail, every single show, we see people dressed in stripes or dressed in Beetlejuice cosplay and garb and all that. And so to walk by and just like subtly listen to their excitement to come see the show that maybe they've had tickets to come see for months. I can't believe I get to see this show. And some kid got their tickets for their birthday that they really wanted for Christmas and all these things. And so then now it's not about playing this song or that song. Now I know what I'm doing this for. So I call that a recalibrator. That recalibrates everything. And then I come in and it's like, okay, if I'm not feeling it, sometimes I'm not. And then I think that's okay. We can't always be 100% of the time. So it's like just finding ways to make this worth doing. It's okay, I'm doing it for that kid that I could see right behind our conductor that is like literally in their seat, jaw dropped. And I'm like, okay, I remember that feeling. So do it for them. And then in turn, I do it for myself because I'm doing it for them, for myself. And then it's all cyclical and it all works hand in hand. And so I'm never really doing the same thing 8 times a week. So that's what makes it very nice. I try to keep that mentality anyway.
So you're on this tour. You've been on the tour for 3 years?
So we're in our year 3. So it's coming up about 2.5 years that we've been on this, or at least since we started New York rehearsals end of October of 2022. So been a minute.
That's great, man.
Been a minute. Yeah.
It's a lot your way, but steady money and you're playing drums for a living. One of those things about gratitude, I remember just playing shows. The last thing I did was Ain't Too Proud. And I just remember trying to get to the theater and all these tourists are in my way. I just want to go from the train to 45th Street, just get out of my way. And then, maybe thank you for coming because you guys are going to that theater and paying a whole bunch of money to keep me employed. So I understand. Excuse
that
me.
part. Yeah, exactly.
So you got to keep things in perspective. And Yeah, it is hard sometimes to do the same thing the same way every night, but you got to find ways to inspire yourself. But
Dude, that's become a great word I like using as a non-negotiable. Touring is a lot about finding non-negotiables and things that you have to set your boundaries on. It's a really easy thing to, well, let me just watch one more TV episode at 2 o'clock in the morning, right before a two-show day. But then you find the consequences of doing exactly that, of I'm tired, I'm not focused. I wasn't watching the conductor when I should have. I zoned out, or I'm malnourished, or I'm dehydrated or something. And then you figure out I can't do that, or at least setting that non-negotiable for yourself, saying, if I want to have a good show, if I want to be at my optimum level, and then that's another really tough thing that you got to keep redefining yourself on the road, where there's a thing called show chops. Everybody knows when you're playing the same show, you just get locked in, and it's a false sense of reality of, oh, I'm killing at this. This is great. And show chops are great. And you think you're playing everything great. And then you go maybe I'm working on an album with my buddy Justin, who plays Beetlejuice in our show. And we've been working on an album of his music for a majority of this tour. I'm playing a lot on it, and I'm mixing. So my day job is I'm also a mixing engineer too. And I'll go and we'll play a song of his, and we'll be in a studio playing. And I'm just like, I don't know how to play drums anymore because it's something totally different. I thought this was easier. Like I used to do. Why am I not doing that? That lick ain't there. Oh, good. I can't do that anymore. Oh, cool. That's what this is about. So then now just even doing things or finding new things to be inspired by gets that recalibration in mind of finding things to be inspired by, to where I don't just seep into the one thing. And easier said than done, because it's just tough. That's the nature of it. But once I find that the non-negotiables of how to make my optimum, of where I'm comfortable saying, look, this is how I'm going to show up for work every day, this is how I'm going to show up for everybody else. We drummers, we know that we have a massive amount of responsibility, even regardless of show. There's different levels of responsibilities in different shows, but most of the time we have a responsibility to elevate the show and keep the engine in the car running. And so if I'm not at my best, then I'm doing a disservice to pretty much everybody. It's ground up stuff. So if I'm not at my best, then that's on me, and I don't want to show up that way. So then finding the non-negotiables to make sure that I'm in a position to do that every day, that's really what's important on the tour. So just keeping a reminder of that too.
Speaking of being the best, you have to have really good equipment, which we will talk about your equipment in a second. Have you had equipment malfunctions? Conductor cam go off, sound go off. What are some things that have happened on the tour, and how did you adjust?
Bruh, this is live theater. I've lost track on both hands and feet how many times something's gone wrong. I go through about a pair of sticks a week, but sometimes I'll go through two pairs a week on the show. But sometimes sticks break mid-song. Just the other day, I broke a stick, threw it away, and tried to get the second pair, and that stick flew out of my hand because I was this and that, and it bounced everywhere, and all it, like onto microphones, all of the things that you don't want to have happen, and stuff that you swear nobody's going to pay attention to. But everybody says, well, if you made a mistake, are you the only one that noticed? Do you think other people noticed? This was one of those that everybody would have noticed, because when a groove should be, you hear, clankety, clankety, clank, clank, recover, and you get that,
man.
I was doing something hip here. Y'all just don't understand what I'm doing. But when, get hip to this guy. But then you get in the camera, you get the MD just going, and it's, sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. But we've had, as you can see around, I don't travel in a drum booth. Because the sound design specifically had these drums to be separate, apart from the pit, always in another room for isolation, and so they can control the different aspects of the sound. And so we travel with these clear-sonic foam baffles. Some of them, as you can see, are in a sorry state. That's the nature of tour, and they get banged around, and some collapse and fold in half. I've had some shows where they just and crash into a ride cymbal or a crash cymbal mid-song, and so I can't use my ride now because it's being choked by something. Pivot to something else, or or one of these mics fell over one time. And so I'm literally like holding it up while playing one-handed. The stuff I've had to do. So, sometimes like our actors will throw things off stage into a hamper in front of the stage. And we had one time where a bouquet of prop flowers was thrown and it hit our conductor go switch that switches between patches and click track.
No.
So one time it hit the next click track in a song, and so it skipped to the very next section, which was maybe 20 bars later in the song. And so we're hearing like some supplemental tracks going, and the click is like immediately was on the totally wrong click to switch to, and so then we just had to plowing through, and then just making sure thankfully on tours you get to really trust your band, and you get to trust that everybody knows each other's sensibilities and how to recover from things like that. So then it's just who's going to take the reins. Usually for this show, it's me or the MD. But in the case where it needs to be a split second decision, it's like crossing the street in New York. Is you can't hesitate. You just got to go and tell the car, I'm going, and you're going to wait. It's just certain responsibilities that in those moments, it's not an over ego sort of thing. It's like, I just know that this is what needs to be done. And so it's like, nope, this is where it has to be. And then just hope that everybody gets the memo and you all arrive on some level the same way. Lots of things like that. But that was one of our bigger ones where the click was just totally derailed. And we just had to figure out, oh, the track is totally wrong and the click is wrong. What are we going to do? Let's find out on next episode. But so live theater, baby.
You've toured all over the place, all over the world, and all over the United States. What is one of the most meaningful, and what's the biggest lesson you learned that has nothing to do with music from the tours that you've done?
Yeah, brilliant question. Because funny enough, I think it has nothing to do with music and everything to do with music at the same time. Is one of my favorite books is The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. Short, relatively short book, but beautifully written to summarize about a boy Santiago's journey to find his treasure, his personal treasure, and his personal journey. And a lot of it is just chock full with life philosophy lessons and whatever. And he's on his road to find his treasure. And the allusion to that is having a dream and figuring out what we do in our lives in order to attain goals and dreams and ambitions and what we need to do along the way and all these life lessons. And one of the concepts in that book I take with me an awful lot. And in fact, it's the concept for an album that I've had on the shelf of my own music that I'm working on. And during the pandemic is when it started. Is the concept is there's a thing called the language of the world that they reference in this book. And whether you believe in God or religion or whatever it is that's governing this thing or lack thereof, I do personally believe in some sort of thing, some sort of essence, some sort of, call it spiritual, call it esoterical, something that binds all of us in the human experience together. And it's not even the human experience. It's animals, it's nature, it's all of these things that make us tick, make karma happen and make the world go around. So whether or not we're getting too spiritual or not, what I've learned from just being out into the world, I've been to 50 plus something countries at this point, and I've learned from really each instance is one, recognize the terrain you're in. Not every place has the same freedoms that America has. Not every place has certain things that Turkey has. Not every place has the same things as Scandinavian countries or down in Australia. Just everything has its own thing. So reading the terrain and figuring out what is the baseline of every culture and everything that moves. It's if you sit and people watch for a second, you establish a baseline, you see what is normal, what is happenstance of what's happening. And then you're more attuned to what is abnormal, somebody running away from something, and then it increases your assessment for potential danger, or you're just more attuned to something. That concept, the language of the world, has been a profound way that I've looked at learning from being around the world and seeing lots of different things happening. Being attuned to how things move and how things affect each other has been one of my biggest lessons that I've learned, because now I go throughout the world figuring out how to take up space in a way that isn't an inflated ego. It's just like I know how to step into what I'm supposed to be doing in the world and how I can positively affect people around me, and vice versa. How can I be receptive to lessons being taught to me in life. And so now I'm just going about the world more open and not closed off to, if somebody teaches me a lesson this way, it might be really quiet. But if I'm not open to that, I might totally miss some really cool things happening. And so now I'm just more observant about how things work in the world. So that's ultimately, in a spiritual sort of way, what I take from those lessons. So it has everything to do with music too, because now it influences my personality. And I believe that who we are as personalities, as human beings, directly affects our music as well, because in some way or another, we translate how we feel and how we take up space and how our personalities are to how we play music, and then just tying that into each other. So it has nothing to do with music, but everything to do with music at the same time. Yeah, and the beauty of playing music, drums in particular, we could just talk about drums because this is a drumming podcast, but drums, what an escape, man. What an escape. If you're having a bad day, hopefully you have a method of coming to the drum. Among the many things Carvin would say is the drums will always take care of you if you take care of them. But drums are your best friend, and they'll put money in your pocket. They'll put a roof over your house. They'll let you travel the world. And so it's that as an escape. This is my best friend. So anytime I come to a kid, I get to, hopefully, if I'm in the right state of mind, to get me there. Like I get to come and shed all of that out, and some practice sessions where you're literally just get it out. And then you come away lifted. Hopefully that's the goal. But music has a way of doing that, and drums in particular. It's going to a rec room to just throw stuff and break stuff and all that. What better way than on drums, man?
We get to hit things for a living. Speaking of hitting things,
yeah.
I know this is part of it's going to go on YouTube, but it's also an audio podcast. So I just like to see your drum set there.
You want to see?
What kind of drums are they?
So this DW, I'll throw it down a little. It's a DW collector's kit. This was actually rented from Boulevard Carroll.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't make the decision in renting it versus buying a kit, but that's above my pay grade. Shannon also used DW for the show. I'd never played DW. I played on kits every once in a while, so I learned how to play this instrument on this tour. It's a Ludwig foam over brass snare drum. Earlier, I had a brass hand-hammered snare Ludwig that's shorter. It's about a 5-inch, which is what Shannon had. Either that or copperphonic, or I'm not sure. But there was a sound to it that I just really gravitated towards. So Ludwig snare, DW drums, Remo drum heads, big fan of Remo drum heads. I probably went through 4 or 5 different iterations of different kinds of heads to get the sound that I felt was what I liked and what I felt was appropriate for the show. And I'm using Emperor Smooth Whites. I haven't seen often people use, but Shannon on his kit was using DW stock heads, and they were smooth. And I was like, man, you got to change those heads, dude. Those are old. But there was a sound he was getting that was coming through the mics, because ultimately how they sound in the room versus how they sound in the mics is a very different scenario. And I'm not all about that, but a thing I think every drummer, especially in music theater, if they're doing a tour or something, every drummer needs to at least get into recorded music or microphones, or how that translates our sound out into the house. And so what he was getting through the microphones was just really cool. And so I tried coated heads and they weren't cutting, and I tried clear heads and they were cutting way too much. And then I tried these, and it was like the perfect mix. There was some clarity that coated over, and it had the Emperor thwack and punch. And so I was like, that's a perfect marriage. And then Zildjian cymbals, that's what I grew up playing, and that's the sound I hear in my head, and that's what Zildjian is, the sound that makes me feel like myself playing drums. That's just the sound I resonate with the most. And Vic Firth 6, I started on Vic Firth, and I use the Extreme 5As because the reach is a little bit reach. And on this kit, you need a little bit of reach. Sometimes I'm doing the windshield wiper where I'm coming from here and have to do stuff like that. So that little extra reach helps too. And even like some pocket stuff, there's a little bit more of the stick that takes a little bit more time, slightly more, that gets to the snare. So it fits into a pocket a certain way that I think is really cool. Yeah.
On tour, you have to break down your drum set on Sundays if you're going to another city. Do you have DW hardware?
It's a myriad, yeah. So there's some DW hardware, DW double kick pedal, and a Gibraltar rack mount for the drums. And yeah, so most of it is DW hardware. But Gibraltar, I've never known how to pronounce that. Some of these things I should know that by now, but that's as Iraq. Yeah.
There are times where I see in certain venues they have a snare drum stand, and there's some people I know who have posted that snare drum stand is you can turn it so it tilts, you could turn it so that it rotates, you could turn it so that it goes up and down, and there's so many different permutations to it. I'm like, okay, which one do I turn to just
Right. Yeah, that's what I got here.
You got that?
Yeah.
Has the lever thing that you
Yeah.
okay.
It's got and it's pros and cons. Every drum
solid.
company, but oh yeah, I've never had a snare fall,
Yeah.
and if I don't want it to move, it ain't gonna move.
Yeah, that's the good thing about their hardware. It's set up to be solid. You set it, forget it.
Yeah, except then every drummer knows this move of going to a clutch. If you're tearing something down, you gotta pinch it and just. Am I crazy?
Oh man,
Every drummer knows that. Where
it.
you're trying to these will stay, and you gotta hawk two of that stuff to get. But then you gotta get the drum keys out, and sometimes I've even had to. Every once in a while, I warm up with Ralph Hardiman marching sticks, and I'm like, this is a job for the Hardimans, man. But they'll never fail me. So there's that.
So how many? There should be a name for it where you're done with the gig, or even setting up for the gig. You put your cymbal on, you take your cymbal off, and you're unscrewing the thing, and all of a sudden, clink, clink.
Oh,
You're
bruh.
like, oh shit, where did it go?
Yeah, and it will. Yeah, you swear you know where it went, but then there's that one odd time where it should be exactly where you heard it, you felt it bounce off your foot. It couldn't be any farther than a few inches, and it's halfway to Timbuktu on the other side. And you ever notice it's always in the spot that is so very conveniently out of reach?
Yeah, I know.
It's just like that, like just past your finger when you're reaching down. Otherwise, you're gonna. It's always that one little reach. It's like the universe is literally.
Like, you're not gonna find me. You're not gonna find me.
The universe is literally like the worst. The worst.
Oh man.
But those are the lessons that keep us patient. You could be aggravated by that, or you could be like, nah, I'm not giving anything I can't handle. So let's just put this in the bag of testing my patience.
Or the time where you're playing and the hi-hat goes inside and then you lose it and the hi-hat. I don't know if that's happened to you.
It hasn't, but I think one time I forgot to tighten like one of the bases so that it wasn't the hi-hat shaft, but it was the thing that holds up the bottom hi-hat that was just loose. And so now all of a sudden, why is my hat? This is tight. The clutch is tight. Why is it getting bigger and bigger? And then the thing just all of a sudden the bottom hi-hat is just down to the bottom. That's my day I'm having today.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Starts out tight. All of a sudden you're playing AC/DC and then you're playing.
And then all of a sudden Jeff Porcaro open hi-hats. How did I get here?
Man.
Good stuff.
I was going to ask you what kind of equipment that you use, but you just explained that. And you were on tour with this until the wheels fall off, or is there an end game? And do you have anything that you're working on outside of this?
We currently don't have a set end date as I know it. I think we're still working out details, but we have public dates until end of Toronto, which we'll be in Toronto for 7 weeks this summer, end of July, which is exactly how the Waitress First National Tour ended. So I'm thrilled to go back and we're playing at the Mirvish, the same theater that we ended that tour with. So I'm tickled as all hell to go back, and that's going to be exciting. And that, long story short, put a little seed to how I got this gig. Phil Martin and I were in town at the same time. My MD on Waitress knew Phil, got us introduced, and then Phil was the one that recommended me to Andy Grubbingieser, our MD, that got contracted for this, Andy. And that's how I got this gig. Yeah.
Oh man.
So he's the hood and all that.
Yeah. Andy's the MD of this tour?
That's correct. Yeah.
That's
cool.
Yeah,
apart from that, we're told that the tour has some dates post that, but for any final confirmation, we're not totally sure yet. But I'm on it until I feel it in my body that it's time to move on to another thing. I still have the energy for this, but I'm at the point now where if the tour announces it's closing, I'm going to be okay with that. I've put in enough time. I'm not going to be heartbroken. Bittersweet, sure, but I would not be opposed to moving on and doing some other things. And I'm coming back to New York. I still have an apartment in Brooklyn that I pay rent for, but I get to keep my stuff in there. Worked out a deal with my roommates. It's a win-win.
And some of the other things that you're working on outside, you said you have an album that you're going to take off the shelf?
I'm currently working with a couple different artists at the moment on their projects. I've had for several years a mixed job with a very dear friend of mine that I met through Postmodern Jukebox. Her name's Robin Adele Anderson. She has her own YouTube channel, and she does a very similar sort of thing where she takes songs and she retroises them, puts them into a certain style, and she's created an immense following, and she's one of my dear friends as well. Whenever I'm back in town, I play on a lot of those videos, but on the road, I travel with a mix rig that I take with me and set up in a hotel room or a B&B, and I mix her live videos that then get put on Spotify and streaming services. And so that's my day job, as I like to call it, and then my night job, I come here.
Great.
So I'm always keeping busy with something like that.
So where can people find you online?
Online, my Instagram is TJ Sound, aptly named because that's my philosophy. TJ Sound is my Instagram. I'm on Facebook. My website is tomjorgensensound.com. And that's ultimately what I stay up with. And I try to stay as active as I can. I got to put some more drum videos up. I've been meaning to do some projects like that, keep active on that, but that'll be in the near future for sure.
I like that whole sound thing.
Yeah.
Great. That's your
That keeps a nice perspective for me. It's a lot of what Carvin is. It's not about what you're doing. It's not about what you're playing. It's what you're doing. And a lot of that is very sound oriented. And because I'm a mixing engineer, I'm always geeking out about what microphones are you using? What processing are you doing out in the house? I'm a big fan of how this acoustically is getting translated to this and then conversely out into the house. Ultimately, I think, as the biased me doing that sort of work as well, I think every drummer should be attuned to at least a little bit of that world. So there's some way to talk with a sound designer of what sound I'm going for and how to get this. If there's ever an opportunity to go hear your book out into the house, you get to hear not only what's happening on stage, but you hear what's being translated and what's the important bits. It's just another element of telling the story.
I appreciate you telling your story. And it was very good to get to know you and catch up with you in between. So,
I gotta play the next one. Hold that down.
It's a pretty long break there.
Yeah.
Congratulations on everything that you've done, and I wish you continued success and keep moving forward. I love your energy, and I'm glad that you could be part of the podcast.
Clay, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. I've been a big fan of this podcast for a long time. You've interviewed some of my very dear friends and some of my great influences. To be asked to be on this is a real treat. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Appreciate the kind words.
Likewise.
All right. We will catch up soon. Hopefully when you get back to New York, and if I'm still here, we will definitely connect.
I would like that very much.
All righty.
All right, man. Take care.
Clayton Craddock here. I need your support to help keep Broadway Drumming 101 alive and growing. This platform is all about giving real, practical advice to musicians who want to succeed, not just on Broadway, but in their careers overall. You can subscribe to Broadway Drumming 101 for just $10 a month or $100 a year. You can get access to exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. When you support Broadway Drumming 101, you're not just backing the site, you're investing in a community of musicians who are serious about their craft. Every contribution makes a huge difference. Thank you for listening to Broadway Drumming 101.